Joey Basto coming to you from the Test Kitchen, where today we're going to be talking about our steak. Now we're going to be following the steak from receiving it to storing it, thawing it, trimming it, slicing it, packing it, and also then labeling it. So without further ado, let's step right into receiving. The first step we're going to be looking at includes the following: receiving, storing, and thawing. Now, as you can see over here on my left, your right, I've got a case of Top Butts. Now, what's important about this case are two things. First of all, you got this big sticker over here that says freezer. What's important about that is the fact that it comes in frozen, but it's stored in the cooler. We want to immediately start the thawing process. The next thing that's important about this is the actual sticker itself. On the sticker, you're going to have the name of the product, yes, but more importantly, you're going to have the amount of weight of the case, and we're going to use that in just a few moments when we make a label. The last thing we're going to do with this case is write the date that we received it on the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Sharpie, and I'm going to write the date right above the sticker. And we're going to use that information. Let me set this right back over here. We're going to use that information for proper rotation. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Now, let's go ahead and come over to the rack. In fact, join me down here for a moment, and you can see exactly what I've done. Now, what I've done is I've taken a case just like the one I showed you a moment ago, and I have unloaded it onto a full sheet pan. Now, in this in particular case, there were 4 pieces. Now, once I have it on this sheet pan, the thawing process starts. Now, let me be clear. As you can see here, I have made a label. Now, on the labels that you're going to make, you're going to want the following: the name of the product, which is sirloin butts, the date that I actually put it as far as started the thawing process, the word thawing so people know what process or point in the process it's at, the weight off the case that we mentioned a moment ago, and then the number of pieces that are on the actual sheet pan. The reason we want to do that is because if somebody were to come in and take one of these pieces off, we're going to want to be able to adjust the sticker. In other words, if we left this on, let's just pretend for a minute that somebody came in and took one of these pieces off, and this sticker was left there, it still says 4 pieces and 64.05 pounds, and that's inaccurate. So what we're going to do is, as pieces are removed, we're going to want to make a new sticker. And this is what you can see I've done here. So basically, I took one off, I reweighed the product, and then I wrote the number of pieces that are there now. And that's for inventory purposes. All right? Now, what I'm going to do, and let me set these to the side for just a moment. I want to put this back on. All right, what I will do next is I'm going to get a sheet pan, and I'm going to put it right on top. And then I'm going to put the next case here. So the case that I had on the table I was talking about would be the next case that I would put on here. Remember, we're going to get that weight off the side of the box, and I would then make another sticker, put it here, and I would just continue the process till I got to the top. What's important here is that we're rotating from the bottom to the top. So the meat that's at the top of the rack is going to be the meat we're pulling first. Simply put, it's first in, first out. Now, there's one more crucial thing you need to understand, and that is this. It's going to take at least 7 days for these Top Butts to fully thaw on this rack in the cooler. So you're going to want to make sure you're planning for it because they have to be thawed to slice. Let's finish this section off. Now, we're going to pretend that we're in a store that's volume dictates that we need several cases of meat at one time in the store. So we're going to pretend that our rack is full, but yet we still have additional cases that we haven't unpacked. And here's what's important. We're going to also put these in the cooler because the thawing process needs to begin. Remember, we just said it takes 7 days for these to thaw on the rack. So we want to go ahead and make sure the thawing process starts. Now, what you need to remember is, in the cooler where you keep these, you're going to want to go no higher than 5 cases. And then on the side and on the back, you're going to want to make sure you have 3 inches all the way around. So basically, the front, you're going to be open to the aisle, so you have plenty of space. And then on the 2 sides and the back, you're going to want to make sure you have at least 3 inches. All right? And that's so that the air can circulate around, which will help the thawing process. Now, what you're going to do as soon as room is available in the rack, you're going to take the meat out of the case and you're going to rotate it in. And you're going to want to continue to do that because, remember, you get 2 trucks a week, and each time you're going to be receiving this meat, you're going to want to get the process rolling every single time the truck comes in. So keep that in mind and plan. We've pushed on from our thawing process to the next step, which is going to be our trimming. Now, when you get this and it's fully thawed, what you want to make sure, first of all, is that the cryovac is still sealed. In other words, there's no holes. The other thing we want to make sure is there's no bloating, because either one of those things is an indication that it could be contaminated, and we do not want to use it. Now, I'm going to pull my pan over, for convenience here, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So very simply, I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to open this up. And the reason I'm doing it over a pan, obviously I don't have a sink here, so I want to make sure that I'm catching all of the blood. Now notice when I opened that pack, all the blood ran down to the bottom, which is what you would expect. So I'm going to go ahead and open the bag up a little bit more and let that drain out on the back side here. And now remember, as I'm doing this, so you understand, I am wearing a cutting glove, and you're going to always want to use a cutting glove, remember, when you're using a knife. Now, let me go ahead and pull this down. I'm going to go ahead and move this over here, and then I'm going to pull this out of the pack, and I'm going to set it down. Now, push this over here and out of the way. Now, basically, we're ready to trim, but before I get into the actual trimming, I want to show you a couple things. You got two sides, and the two sides will be the one, which is the fat cap side, which remember, you never want this to be any more than 1/4 inch. And then you've got what I would call the meat side. Now, on this meat side, it's trimmed pretty close, so there's not a lot of trimming that needs to go on here, but let me show you what we are going to trim. We're going to want to get rid of the silver skin or the connective tissue, all right, and any excess fat. So I'm going to get rid of a little bit here and a little bit here and just this little bit of silver skin, and then we'll be ready to go to the slicing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm very simply going to put my knife underneath the silver skin, and I'm going to pull up a little bit. Now, what I want to do, I'm trying to get the knife as close to the surface as I can without actually coming through. Now, notice also I'm cutting away from myself. Now, once I do this, I can then actually show you, as I pull this up, the piece that I've just trimmed. Now, notice on this side, it's all the fat and the silver skin that we described. And on this side, we've got very little red meat. Now, obviously, the less red meat we have, the better it is for us because we're saving that meat to actually serve. So I'm going to set that trimming to the side, and I'm just going to repeat the process. Now, if you'll notice, what I'm getting a hold of here is the excess fat, and we want to make sure that we take this off. Now, remember, we don't want to take every little single bit of fat because the truth of the matter is you could continue to trim all day long until you have nothing left. And I say that a little bit as a joke, but really quite serious. You don't want to trim too much. You just want to remove what is considered excess fat. Remember, fat does mean flavor, so we do want to leave some. Now, the connective tissue or the silver skin, you definitely want to get off because silver skin does not cook away like some of this other fat. Basically, what you're looking at now is the sirloin top butt fully trimmed. Now, notice we've gotten rid of the excess fat. We took care of the little silver skin that was around, and this is pretty good to go. Now, a good rule of thumb is if you're wanting to know, how do I know, am I cutting too much? Do I have enough? The pile here, it's just about a handful. Anything more than this, and you know you're starting to cut too much. Or the product is just too fatty. And in that case, we're going to want to make sure we get with the purchasing group and we get the vendor to check out what they're sending us. Now, that being said, we're ready to move on to the next step, which is slicing. So let me get the slicer, and we'll be ready to go. We are ready to slice our sirloin top butt, but before we do that, let me make this clear. You can see I've got the slicer out in front of me, and I'm ready to go, but I want to make sure that you understand that this is the DVD that actually came with the slicer. Now, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch this DVD, you need to go ahead and pause my DVD, put this one in, and watch it, because this is going to take you through the setup and the care for this piece of equipment. It also talks about the safety features, so you're going to want to make sure you watch this before you go any further. Just before I slice the sirloin top butt, what I want to do is set a scene. First of all, I've got my recipe here for reference, so what I'm going to need to do is set it to the side. Now, I just want to verify with the ruler that I've set my gauge plate to 3/4 inch. So we're ready to go. So let me set the ruler over here to the side as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top butt and I'm going to set it on. Now, when I set it on, a couple things to make note of here. First of all, the fat cap or the fat side is up and the meat side is down. All right, now I'm all the way in the home position. What I mean by home position is all the way over closest to me with the slide. Take this, lower it on, and that's going to hold the meat in place as I'm slicing. So I think everything is ready, and I'm going to go ahead and push this through. And notice when I push it through and pull it back, the sirloin top butt automatically falls into place for the next cut. Now, as you can see, I've got my first slab, and I'm going to set it down. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to measure exactly what I've got. and I'm right there. So I ought to be good to go. Now, that being said, I could feel comfortable that my measurements are right, and I could feel comfortable that I could go straight through it. Now, when you do this, you do not want to go slow. Once you start to push, you want to go ahead and push all the way through. That will ensure you of getting a nice, smooth, even cut. All right. Now, if when you pull the slide back into the home position, in other words, once again, closest to you, if the meat ever hangs up or doesn't fall all the way, all you're going to want to do is adjust to make sure it falls and it sets flat against the gauge plate so you get an even cut. Now, mine's in a perfect position, but just a warning in case you see it. So, let's go ahead and do the last cut. And there we go. Set this over here. Safety, always cut the machine off when you're done. When the blade stops turning, you're then ready. And what I mean by ready is I could put the next top butt up to cut it, or if I was finished, I could go ahead and cut the machine off and I could move the gauge plate back even with the blade, once again, for safety's sake. Now, a couple things to show you. First of all, what I got, and I got to pull it out here, it's just a little leftover scrap. And this was off the last slice that we did, and that's okay. It would be wasted. We would throw that away. But that's just to let you know, not every time you're going to end up with exactly a full slice, if you will. And anything extra, we'll make a decision on, is it thick enough? Can we use it, or do we need to throw it away? And obviously, in this case, we need to get rid of this. All right, so let me set this to the side. And now the next thing we need to do is look at each one of these slabs and see if we need any additional trimming. So let me get the slicer to the side here. Let me set this up to make it easy for you to see. So give me just a moment. We'll come back for trimming. We are ready to trim up our slabs, but let me set the scene for you right quick. What I've got is my recipe over here for reference. I've got plastic wrap we'll use in just a moment. Then I've got my knife. I've got my ruler, of course the slabs we just cut on my cutting board here, and then I've got a 2-inch full pan, which we'll once again get to in a moment. Now, basically what you want to do when you get to this point is you want to look at the slab and you want to visually inspect it. You want to make sure there's not excess fat. Now, the excess fat normally is going to be along the fat cap, and as you can see, there is a pretty good amount of fat. In fact, it looks a little heavy, so we want to measure it. So I'm going to come in here with my ruler, and I'm going to show you that we're at 3/4 of an inch, when remember we only want 1/4 of an inch. So basically what that means is I'm going to have to come back and I'm going to have to trim some of this fat cap. Now I will inspect the entire piece as far as the entire slab, but for now, let me go ahead and trim this up right here. Get it down to 1/4 inch. I'm going to turn it around. And just like before, because we're using a knife, I've got my cutting glove on. I'm going to come around and I am going to trim this off. Now remember, you do not want to get closer than 1/4 of an inch because you do want to leave some fat on this steak. So let me turn it back around here, set it up nice and pretty, get my ruler, and want to check it again. Use this hand so you can see. And now as you see, we're right at 1/4 of an inch for our fat cap. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue this on this end, make sure I clean it up if I need to. Yep, I got a little bit to trim on this end, so let me go ahead and take care of this. And once I've done this, I'm going to then set this piece to the side, and when I say to the side, into my 2-inch full pan. So let me take it over here. I'm going to set it in. I'm going to push it up against the wall so it's nice and snug so we keep the shape and the thickness because that's important. And then I'm going to go to my next slab. Now, once I get the next slab up, I'm going to repeat the process. And basically all I'm looking for is the excess fat. Make sure my fat cap is right. Any excess fat that may be on this side of the slab I'm going to also take care of, but I'm going to go through the rest of these and I'm going to set them in my 2-inch pan. So let me get this done and I'll see you in just a moment. Just before I cut my slabs into portions, I want to make a couple points, and that is, remember when I was trimming my slabs, what I was doing is I was taking the slabs and I was setting them into the 2-inch full pan. Now I do that because it helps the steak keep its shape and its thickness, and that's what we're after. Now if you don't want to put them in a 2-inch full pan, that's fine, but you do want to move them off to the side of the board so they don't get in the way when we're cutting our portions, and you're able to help set up, once again, to keep their shape, because that's what we really need them to do. Now, I'm ready to cut this first one into portions, and here's what you need to remember about portions. We want each one of them to weigh around 4 ounces. So what I have done is I've taken my slab and I've weighed it just prior to laying it on the board. Basically what that helps me do with a little simple math, a little division, is determine how many 4-ounce pieces I can get out of this slab. So here's what I'm going to do to get that. basically I'm going to go ahead and iron up. And I'm going to use the back side of the knife to kind of help me out. And basically I'm just going to make little indentions. So I put a little mark there and I think, okay, that's going to be my first one. Then I'll come down to this end and I'm going to get one out of this end. And then right about there ought to be 4 ounces. So I've got so far 1, 2, and 3. And with this large piece in the middle, I'm very simply going to cut it right down the middle. And that's going to be my 4 and 5. So let me go ahead and cut this as I've marked it. And I'll push them to the side as I'm done with them. Over here. That over here. And once again, with this large piece in the middle, just going to turn it a little bit. And there we go. And there are my pieces. Now, what you're going to want to do as you're cutting portions is you're going to want to have your scale close by. You're not going to want to necessarily weigh every single piece, but you're going to want to weigh these pieces just to see how close you're getting. So I'm going to check these pieces, see exactly where I'm at, and then I'm going to get the next slab, and I'm going to keep going. All right, so let me get that done. I've finished cutting all my slabs down into portions, and in fact, I've even started the packing process. Now, if you'll come down here with me, I can kind of show you. Let me pull this piece of parchment paper back. Now, basically, what I've got underneath here are 5 rows of 4. So it's 5 lengthwise and then 4 widthwise, giving me 20 pieces total. Now, what you'll want to know is the max you'll have on any layer is going to be 20 pieces, and you'll have no more than 2 layers per pan. That being said, I put a piece of parchment paper in between the 2 layers, and I finished off with what I had. Now, here's the important part. Now, today for the video, I only sliced down 1 sirloin top butt. And in the store, that would probably be a rarity that would ever happen with you. You're going to be cutting more at a time. So you'll have enough to go ahead and finish this pan off. If you ever stop and you're in the middle of a pan, it's okay. Just pack them as tightly as you can together so it helps retain that shape, and you'll be good to go. Now, the next thing I would do is I would take my plastic wrap and I would wrap this pan very tightly. And just for the sake here, let me push it to the side so I can show you this. And then I would do the labeling. Now, what is very important about this process is the labeling because it's new. Now, what I would tell you is the label I just showed you is a day dot that we're going to use as a use by date. So if today is Tuesday and we're cutting this sirloin top butt, what you've got is 3 days, including the day that you cut it. So we would have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in which to use this product. After that, it will be expired. If you ever walk into a cooler and you find a pan with product that has expired, you're going to want to get with the manager and let them make the decision on the product. That being said, we're good to go. Let me get this thing wrapped, let me get it labeled, and we'll move on. So that's it, from receiving all the way through labeling. But as usual, if you have any questions, call us at the 1-800 number at the bottom of the screen, and we'll take care of you. So until I see you in the field, good luck.